Hello, Warhammer fans. It's the Andy and Rem show. Minus Rem, which also means minus all the music. Wow, wow. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Andy and Rem show. There's no Remington here this week because obviously he's got more important things to be doing than what we consider to be his number one responsibility in life, that is the Andy and Rem show, put back to every 2 weeks to accommodate him, and he can't even make that this week. What is the world coming to? But thankfully, an equally A-list superstar, rock star legend himself has decided to fill in for Mr. Remington. We have Stu here, of course. Hello.
Andy, how's it going? Glad to be back.
It's going quite well over here.
A bit chilly still up here, but no complaints.
Well, it would be, wouldn't it?
Usually, yeah.
Now, folks, there's something I have to share with you first of all. The reason I'm not wearing an orange t-shirt today is because I don't want to ruin any of my orange clothing, because I did have a bit of a phantom nosebleed the other day, and I think it was down to reaching such ridiculously high altitudes in this bad boy. Bum, 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 bum. Look at that. Not actually finished assembling this yet. But you can see it is quite a beast. And I'm going to compare it live on camera now to the puny, partially painted gyro bomber. There they are side by side, so you can see, and look at that. There is a significant size difference there. Gyro bomber, which will be cast aside shortly, maybe put on eBay, or perhaps I'll set fire to it and get another 7,000 views on a video. But this is quite a beast. Mr. Stu, have you been following the Kharadron Overlord developments?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, always interested in new AOS stuff when it comes out. That is quite the size difference, isn't it?
It's quite a sizable beast. I've seen all of them in the Warhammer World cabinet together, and the big one is quite mighty and meaty at the same time. So let's see who we've got in the audience tonight before we go any further, shall we? Because it's quite a packed house. We have the likes of Andrew Wade, Bazooka J Rambo, Charlie Banks, Demon _Lizard _from _outer _space, DLB Dibbington, that's a new name I think, Drunken Deer, Gloomdreddy Gaming, Mickey Jenber, Swifty, and there are a few people that haven't commented in the last couple of minutes but were loitering. The likes of Abnormal, Nick Trajano, Neil Parks, Jones Yarny, Dual Revolver 1114. I think people are going to start signing up with more and more ridiculous usernames just to get me to read them out, aren't they?
Yep.
Especially with the underscores. Bazooka J Rambo's in there, Pirate _Kai, so we've got another underscore in there tonight. We've also got Thomas.
Oh.
That's not a very specific username, is it? I'm surprised that was available. Usually you'd have to have like Thomas 111187, wouldn't you?
Maybe everyone just thought there's no way it would just be Thomas, so I'll just put a few numbers around, something at the end of it.
It could be that first person to think, you know what, I'm just going to try it, just Thomas. Oh, look, it's available, what do you know? Right, folks, so we've got plenty to sink our fangs into this week, because not only, well, we're not even going to touch on the kind of biggest news that GW have put out, because this is the AOS show, of course, and 40k has caused numerous armies to be set on fire this week with their recent revelations, but we're not going to talk about that at all, because we've got Kharadron Overlords to talk about. We've got the Khorne battle tome, which we didn't talk about yet because we wanted to get a nice cornflake-obsessed guest on first, which is exactly what we have this week. So we'll get to that. Mickey James says, what have happened to Drunken _Elf? Yes, I wonder what did happen to Drunken _Elf. We've had a lot of underscores over the years, but that is one that's disappeared. But in effect, he's been replaced by Drunken Deer and Demon _Lizard. So we've got, he's kind of split into two personalities there, perhaps. Okay, let us dive straight in, shall we? Let's have a look at the GW website, because we're going to start off with the Overlords, the Lords of the Skies. We're not going to look at that Khorne stuff just now, but we are going to talk about that tonight. Let's just have a quick glance through the various Kharadron Overlord units and their war scrolls. So this, £50, which I think, looking at the size of it, is reasonable by GW standards. You'd probably expect to pay slightly more than that for a new kit of this size, and none of them, even the latest one, isn't going to be the Stardrake price. They're all lower than that, so that's nice, because it does seem like you'll need multiple of these ships in most armies.
This is the one you got, isn't it? The mid-level one?
Yes, this is the medium one. They brought this one out first just to whet everyone's appetite before the absolute monster one comes out next week. And it's quite tasty. It's a lot of fun to assemble these new models, actually, because they go together very, very well. There aren't really gaps. Everything just slots into place nicely. Even without glue, a lot of the parts would stay together, just not very securely. So it's very, very well done. And I'm going to comment more on the Arcanauts as well in a minute. But let's have a look at the rules a bit as we go. We're not going to go into any great detail. We've already looked a bit at some of these, but now that they're all out. So the main issue with this thing is the choice of weapons that you have that you can mount on there. However, it's not that much of an issue because they are totally separate pieces. There isn't one piece that you need for both weapons, so it's very, very easy to swap them out and magnetize the heavy sky cannon and the heavy sky hook. And everyone is saying, well, the obvious choice is go with the heavy sky cannon because it's got a better to wound roll and it does d6 damage. And the heavy sky hook, really the benefit to that is that if you wound the enemy with it, then you can immediately move d6 as long as you move closer to the enemy than you were before, which I'm not entirely sold on being able to move d6 inches for the reduced profile that that weapon has. What do you think?
Yeah.
I don't think it's enough of a bonus, that d6-inch movement, where you could just roll 1 inch. So is it really worth moving 1 inch closer to the enemy?
Yeah, not really, no. I don't think...
It's only one shot. Only half of these are actually going to hit in the first place unless you buff them up.
Yeah, and I don't really think moving towards the enemy is, in general, is something these guys really want to be doing.
The ships may be slightly more than the others because they can, of course, unload troops out into combat.
Oh,
but really... Yeah, I'm not sold on that at all. I'd much rather have the better to wound roll because you're already struggling to hit with this thing with one attack. So you really want that extra attack to have a really good chance of wounding and then doing massive damage rather than slightly less chance of doing anything and then just moving you slightly closer to death, which is probably what it does. It does have other weapons, of course, as well. The ether shot carbines, and that... the number of shots you're going to get with that reduces the more damage you take. 14 wounds with a 5+ save. You might think that's not a huge amount, but these big ships, of course, can be accompanied by the gun hauler, which we'll get to in a minute, which can make them more survivable. But this can carry 10 models with the Skyfarer rules, which is pretty much all of them. But there are some models that you can attach to these ships that don't have that, that don't add to the capacity as well. And for every model you put over it, for every 1 over the 10, then you reduce its move by 1 inch. So if you want to stick a unit of 10 and 1 character in there, it's not really slowing you down that much. It's only slowing you down a single inch. So your maximum move would drop to 9.
It's probably a small price to pay for what it gives you in return.
It certainly is. Some of the characters are quite tasty. And even when it takes a lot of wounds, it doesn't become that slow, actually. It's a very small drop-off in movement.
Yeah,
Most of the drop-off just with the number of attacks in close combat and with this weapon here. So you're not losing a huge amount of its usefulness when it starts to take damage, which I like.
2 inches at the most is really nothing.
Yeah, and by the time you've taken that much damage, you could unload the guys in there as well if they were overburdening it.
Yeah.
So it's not much of a loss at all. And for every Endrin rigger you have on there, if you have one, you can roll, and on 4+ you can heal a wound, which is nice. And there are just a billion special rules, which we're not going to go into all of them right now. But it has bombs, of course. It has different kind of bombs that you can drop on the enemy, but flying enemy units aren't affected by that. It's also got mines, which can affect enemy flying units. So really, this is just your mid-range transport / gunship, which the weapon isn't going to be hitting all that often unless you buff it, but it's still pretty tasty. And overall, the transport capability is lovely as well, protecting the troops inside, unless, of course, let's just have a look. So where's the rule for when it goes down? That's got to be, okay, here we go. If it's destroyed, the passengers immediately bail out. So if you roll a 1, then the model is slain. So it's effectively like going through a realm gate.
Yeah,
So
that's not so bad.
it depends who you are. If you're using Remington's skull dice, then the entire unit will just be wiped out. But if you're using normal dice, then really you may be going to lose 1 or 2. which isn't that bad of a thing, really. You're not going to be too upset about that, especially since the ship being destroyed will have already drained your tier ducts completely, no doubt. So there's that one. And now we're immediately going to look at the other ship, which is currently on pre-order, which is the Grundstock Gun Hauler. This one's only £30. This is probably slightly closer to gyro bomber size, but it's still bigger. I can attest to that after seeing it in the flesh. And it's still quite a sizable beast. It just has one massive ball carrying it rather than multiple. And this doesn't have any transport capacity, but it does have unique special rules. So let's have a look there. Okay, so this has 10 wounds, which isn't bad, really. And that's also got 5+ save. This one is faster, though, with a move of 12 inches. And you may also notice that this one doesn't diminish as it takes damage as well, which is going to come into full effect. It certainly is, because whenever it's escorting, if you're within 3 inches of another sky vessel, other than another gun hauler, and it suffers a wound or mortal wound within 3 inches, then you can roll a dice, and on a 5 or more, this model can take the wounds instead. So it can basically absorb a third of the wounds that are going onto nearby ships. So that's what it's for, really, because it doesn't diminish the more wounds it takes, and it's got 10 to sit on. So really, that's quite a sizable chunk of wounds you're going to be able to take on this thing for the benefit of your troop transports. And other than that, it has the same kind of bomb capability as the others. And it's also got a variety of weapons. It's also got a sky cannon, which is pretty tasty. That's pretty much the same as the weapon on the other ship. Hits on 4, wounds on 2+, same rend, d6 damage. But then it's also got other options. You can have the drill cannon, which has higher rend and has guaranteed damage rather than d6. So there is something to be said for having guaranteed damage, because of course you're not going to be rolling ones. So you would change your target priority. If you're carrying a sky cannon, you'd go for something that's really big, trying to put maximum wounds on it. Drill cannon may be something that's heavily armored but doesn't have that many wounds. A small character, perhaps.
You don't see a whole lot of stuff that has -3 rend.
You do not. Yeah. I can maybe think of 1 or 2 other things that have that, and I can't name any of them off the top of my head. So
Same.
That is pretty tasty. I've seen a lot of people's lists online that they've been theorizing on even before they've even got their hands on any of the models or put them on the table, and a few of them were kind of writing off the gun hauler as a waste of points. But I think it definitely has its utilities with these special rules.
Yeah, I would say so. I would definitely include one if I was doing.
Well, I've ordered one.
Of course.
I'm probably going to end up getting one of everything at some point, although I will just run out of money before then. Unless people want to pay, I think, what was it I said, like £50, and I'll write a personal message to them inside one of my airships, so it'll never be seen by the naked eye until it gets melted down or something in the future. I haven't been taken up on that offer, although someone did pay me 50p to think of their name while assembling the model. So, yeah, that was a nice financial boon for me. So the Arcanauts, now these are very, very fun to assemble, actually. Often with models now, you don't have much variety of poses, but with these guys, you can position the arms whichever way you want, because it's just a flat joint between the arm and the shoulder. So that's much more variety than you normally have with models nowadays. And also the heads, you can face them in any direction. You can tilt them up and down a bit. The only thing you don't have any choice over is the legs and the torso, because they're already attached. But it's kind of old school when you used to be able to put the arms in whichever direction you wanted. And I like that. I've got 20 of them assembled on the desk here. And let's just stop the screen share for a sec before we go on, and I'll just show off some of these. So you can have all kinds of different poses with them. I've got one here with his weapons down. Let's see if it's going to focus on him. Let's get it right up there. There we go.
Nice.
So there's one pose. Let's pick out another fancy one. Let's not do all of them. Here's another interesting one. So I've gone kind of 50-50 with the axes and the swords. Some people online were saying that, no, dwarves, they just shouldn't have swords at all. It's not in their nature. But I did counter with that. I've got some very, very old metal dwarves which do have swords, and they predate when axes and hammers were the only weapons that dwarves actually carried. There's also...
Dwarves used to have spears as well, didn't they?
They used to have all kinds of weapons until that was just written out. There is also this guy as well, who we'll get to shortly in the old War Scroll analysis. Let's see how close we have to get for it to focus on him. There we go. And his base is actually the reason I haven't based any of the others yet, because I think that looks really nice, the kind of smooth stone with little crystals or something poking out of it. And I want to not exactly replicate that, but I want to get something with a similar theme and not just have the usual dry brushed grey stones on my bases. So I haven't put them on bases yet, and I'm thinking what I could do. I've got some smooth kind of stones, that you would put in like flower pots or fish tanks and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I may do something with those that are a bit smooth and maybe paint some of them gold, something like that. I want to do something a bit different with them, though. So we shall see. And well, while I'm showing you what I've got on the table, I'll show off these gigantic, impressive balls as well, which are going to be sustaining the flight of my frigate at some point when they're actually attached.
Nice.
And while I'm on the topic, I haven't allowed any parts of this thing to move. Some people want this at the back to move, and also the weapon turret, which is here, can move up and down as well, and side to side, but I'm not having any moving parts at all on mine. Because as far as I'm concerned, all that does is allow for the paint to scrape off. And it's just not fun painting them in the first place. When the pieces are moving around, you're poking them around with the paintbrush and it's just sliding all over the place. It's not fun. But I may magnetize the two weapon options, though. That's the only thing I might do. Because if you look, actually inside there is where the weapon goes. So the part that's magnetized wouldn't show at all. So even if a bit of paint comes off, you wouldn't be able to see it, which I like. It's like a little housing for the weapon there. So I think magnetization could be the way to go with that turret. Okay, let's dive back to the War Scroll. Okay, here we go. So we're on the Arcanauts now. Again, we're not going to spend a huge amount of time looking at all of these. I'm sure people have already seen everything there is to see here. But 4-inch move, so not that huge at all, but you're going to be transporting the ones that actually want to be moving, probably, and the ones that don't can just stand still. And in the box, you get one of each of the 3 heavy weapons, or the 3 special weapons, which are the Ethermatic Volley Gun, the Light Skyhook, and the Sky Pike. So obviously, people have been suggesting that some of them are better than others. You look at the range on the Skyhook, making that superior. The Volley Gun has 6 attacks. So that sounds pretty tasty, even though they're only hitting on 5s. There are ways to improve that, though. I mean, even right here, add 1 to the hit rolls for any model if all of its attacks are made against a hero or a monster. So that's pretty tasty in itself. So what I've done, I'm going to build 3 of each of the weapons when I get my 3rd unit, and then I'm going to have 1 unit for each weapon, basically, 3 of each in a unit. So I'll have a unit that's going into close combat with 3 Sky Pikes, and then the 2 shooter units. The Skyhook unit will be slightly further away, of course, because they've got longer range, and the Volley Gun will be the slightly more medium range unit. But some people are just thinking about spamming the same weapon across all of them, which I'm not a huge fan of.
I could definitely see people spamming the light Skyhooks.
Yeah, it's good range on it, good range, D3 damage as well. So very, very tasty. And the one choice that seems really obvious is the captain. He can either have a volley pistol or he can have the ether flare pistol. So he can either have a better to wound characteristic or he can have an extra attack. Statistically, there is no reason to have a better wound characteristic than having just an extra attack whatsoever. There's no reason at all that you would want that. So, and it doesn't look as cool as the volley pistol either. So I feel like that's a bit of a letdown. So I'm probably going to model all mine with the volley pistol because it looks cool and it's just better statistically. There's no reason not to just take that, really. So, units of 10, 3 special weapons in each. I'd be interested to see if anyone mixes and matches. I could see maybe people putting Sky Pikes in with the volley guns, because obviously if you're using the volley guns, you're going to be somewhat close to the enemy, so maybe you'd want the extra combat power as well. But they do have, some of the heroes give you benefits to actually spamming weapons as well in this army. So I don't think any of those are actually out yet, though. So these are the only battle line unit as well. So really, 2,000 points, you need to have at least 30 of these in your army, which I'm not too disappointed about because they are really nice models and they were a lot of fun to put together.
Yeah, no, you definitely don't mind when they're, I'd say, really nice models, a lot of weapon options to choose from, so it's not like you're going to have 30 guys all with the same thing.
And of course, you're not being forced into having lots of guys all in the same pose, and you're not being kind of strong-armed into having units of 30 of them because they get like +1 to their save or +1 attack when you have 20 plus models. Really, just 10 is fine. And of course, that's the capacity of the frigate as well, which is going to be handy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people put units of 20 into the big ironclad ship as well. Okay, so the Thunderers are also on pre-order. I'm slightly less happy with these guys because of the weapon options, because you only get one of each in the box. So what I'm tempted to do is just build one of each and then just run them all as whatever weapon I feel like using in that game.
Yeah.
And I don't think too many people would complain if you did that, unless maybe you're at a tournament, which I probably wouldn't be anyway.
No, it doesn't really matter. I mean, like, nobody was going to expect you to try and get hold of all those bits just to build the same weapons. But
yeah, the thing is, people are desperately trying to trade them all, but they're all trying to trade for the same ones, so it's not really going to work out, is it? Because everyone just wants the same weapon. But I mean, look at that. The bird just sells it for me.
that's a nice touch.
Is the coolest part. So let's have a look here. So the weapons, the one everyone is after, I am reliably informed, is the, where is it? It is the, I believe it's the, is it the ether cannon?
Ether cannon?
Yeah, I think it was. So the ether cannon, which wounds on a 2+ and does D3 damage. So if you have a whole unit of those, really, then you then use one of the characters which gives everyone an extra attack with a particular weapon type. So spamming weapons is helpful there. But I actually quite like all of these weapons, to be honest, having looked at them before. Even the rifle has decent range. You get 2 attacks with that one, only 1 damage. The fumigator, really short range, random number of attacks, but it has better wound roll. The deck sweeper is where you can get a lot of attacks at mid to short range. 12 inches in Age of Sigmar, I suppose, really is short range, isn't it? Because as soon as you get that close, you're pretty much going to be charged by things. But then, of course, you're firing in combat as well, and if you have this behind another unit, for example, because there's no benefit to, or there's no negative to being close to the enemy when you have these guns. You don't get extra attacks if you're not in combat or anything like that. So that only wins on a 4+. Ether cannon we already touched on, but it's shorter range. And the Grundstock mortar is one that's really interesting to me as well because of the 36-inch range.
Wow.
Can you think of much else that has a range that high other than maybe a cannon?
No, not that high. No, especially not on an infantry model.
I think the new Stormcast bows, don't they have 30-inch, those long-range ones?
Oh yeah, the long strike.
Yeah. But these are pretty tasty with D3 damage, so if you have a unit of 5 of them, that'd be quite nice. So, the little ethematic bird known as Drill Bill, which, so he can peck at the enemy's vulnerable spots. So if you've got any kind of exposed danglage going on, Drill Bill is going to be in there having a nibble. So any enemy unit that ends its charge within 1 inch of this unit, or within 1 inch, within 1 inch of the unit with Drill Bill, roll the dice. On a 2 or more, they take a mortal wound. So it's a nice little bonus, and if there's just one model that wants to charge at you, and he's down to his final wound, then he's pretty much not going to charge you, is he?
No.
He's going to be instantly dead. Keep your distance. When this unit is chosen to make attacks in the combat phase, they can instead retreat, making a move, including running, if you wish, as if it were the movement phase. That is interesting, because of course you can still do that in the enemy phase. So when the enemy charge this unit, they'll have to attack them first, probably. Otherwise, you'll just run away.
Otherwise, you'll back off and shoot them.
Yeah, so that is a very interesting thing, actually, and that's got a lot of tactical potential there, because the enemy might not want to actually be attacking these guys first in close combat. There might be something that's more critical, but if they don't, you can just run away. So I like that. Makes them very survivable. I'm
surprised those guys only had 1 wound. I thought they might have 2.
They do have a 4+ save though,
True.
so that's not too bad. And really, they're not exactly a glass cannon. They're what's slightly tougher than glass, but not quite that robust. They may be like plywood cannon. I think it'd stand up to a bit more than glass, probably.
An MDF cannon?
I don't know about that. I wouldn't trust an MDF cannon. Maybe you could get laser cut MDF cannons from some of these companies now that do all this laser cut goodness. Let's see. So honor bearers, you can reroll battle shock tests for a unit if it has honor bearers, which is always handy. With this particular unit, I don't think it'd be that big of a deal because if you've only got 5 models in it probably, and if you are taking enough casualties to risk failing a battle shock test, the unit's probably on its knees about to be dead anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't think battle shock's going to be a huge concern for them. Okay, so I think they're tasty. Some people weren't so keen on their rules actually, which surprised me because I think they look tasty as well. I think everything looks good so far. I don't actually have the battle tome yet because the website I made my order from was sold out of that by the time I got around to it. So that's in my second order.
Yeah, there seemed to be a lot of that going around. The sold out or out of stock signs on all the Overlord stuff.
Yeah, every website seemed to have a different thing out of stock, so it was impossible to get everything you wanted from one place. So in my second order, I've got the Battle Tome, the Thunderers, the War Scroll cards, which I'm going to give a try, even though people have said the text is too small, and also the Gun Hauler as well, and another box of Arcanauts. Then on to the next page. So we've got the Admiral, which of course I have. So let's have a look at him.
Is he still the only character that's been up for?
He's the only one available right now, but there is another one being released next week, I think, which we will get to shortly. This is the only one either for sale or on pre-order today. So this guy, 3+ save, 6 wounds, so slightly more than your average hero. Most of them tend to have 5, don't they?
Yep.
So people don't really rate this guy, you know. On all the various Kharadron Overlord Facebook groups, of which there are about 4 that have sprung up, that all have a similar number of members. They're vying to be the dominant Facebook group for the Overlords. They're not really so keen on the Admiral. They leave him out of most of their theoretical lists that they've put together so far. So let's see. Okay, so he's got a pistol with 3 attacks. Nothing too amazing about that. His hammer's all right. A couple of damage per wound and pretty decent numbers there. Some nice rend. So you're probably going to get through a few wounds with him. First to the fray, if he ends his charge move within half an inch of an enemy, he can add 1 to the charge rolls for friendly units within 18 inches till the end of the phase, which is nice. It'll just give you that little bonus. People charging in behind him, especially if they're unloading together from a ship.
Mm-hmm.
Master of the Skies, if he's embarked on a sky vessel, the vessel can run and shoot in the same turn. Okay, so I think that's quite nice. Even if it's running away, which sometimes it might be. So running and shooting in the same turn if he's on that, which is a nice feature, I think. You can re-roll hit and wound rolls of 1 for the Admiral if his target is a hero or a monster. So a lot of their rules are beneficial when fighting heroes and monsters so far, which is nice. And then he has the Code. So he can apply one of these abilities. So he can either... Units within 12 inches of the Admiral in the battle shock phase do not have to take battle shock tests, which is like a watered-down version of the Stormcast ability that's a bit like that, but longer range, with the Celestin on Drakov. There's Lookout for the Boss. If there's a friendly Skyfarer's unit within 1 inch of the Admiral, when the Admiral suffers a wound or a mortal wound, on a roll of 5 or 6, that unit suffers a mortal wound instead. So if he's getting down there in wounds and there's a unit nearby and you need to keep him alive, then you can put wounds onto the enemy, basically a lookout, sir. Also, you can re-roll failed hit and wound rolls for the Admiral in the combat phase. So, I mean, look at that. In the combat phase, he's hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, and you can re-roll both of them.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty handy.
Yeah, with rend of -2, you won't expect people to be saving much of that either, will you? So you'd expect him to be dishing out 4 damage, really, each combat phase.
On average, you would say, with the -2 rend, normally things aren't going to be getting a save.
Yeah, most often they won't. So you would think on average you'd be getting, what, like 3.75 wounds a turn or something like that?
Yeah, probably.
And if it's your turn, he's going to be shooting as well. So I think he's actually pretty tasty, this guy. And I can definitely see a place for him. I think it's just that some of the other characters have even more bizarre abilities. Mickey Jennifer said, I thought Andy and Ren was the dominant Age of Sigmar Facebook group. It is, but I'm talking about Kharadron Overlords specific Facebook groups, the communities where people can just discuss these strategies without the prying eyes of the other faction players in there. So that is all the Overlords that are available right now, and quickly, I'll show you that this is what's coming next as well. So Grombrindle, 40 Years of White Dwarf, I'm not sure what that actually means. Is that a model?
I hope so.
I hope it is, but I haven't seen any pictures of it. And if there is, how will he be dressed? Will he be dressed for sky flight? That would be interesting.
Will it be a white-haired fire slayer?
That could be. So the Ironclad is out, Brock Grungson is out, and the Etheric Navigator. So the one everyone's raving about is the Etheric Chemist, and he's not going to be out yet. I imagine he's coming with whatever's left the week after that. So I'm probably not going to be placing an order for this lot because I'm not going to get the Ironclad yet because I'll run out of money. I don't really want to be selling both of my lungs and both of my kidneys right now. He is a really nice model, actually, Brock Grungson. Seeing him in person, he's almost as big as the Grunstock Gunhauler, actually. He's not that much smaller. He is massive. He didn't look that big in the original pictures, but he is quite big. So eventually I'd like to get him, and I'd probably like to get one of each of the heroes. So probably get a Navigator at some point. Very, very tasty, though. Let's see. Demos Phobos says, I think he's tasty. I don't know which miniature he's talking about, so I'm going to assume he's talking about me. That's just a natural assumption. Okay, so... Oh, we don't look at them yet. Okay, so... Let's get off the screen share and go to our second topic, shall we? Because... Before we get to the Overlords again, when we'll run through the comments and see what people are saying about them, let's start off talking a little bit about Khorne, shall we? Because the Battle Tome, the new Khorne Battle Tome, came out a few weeks ago. And we've been waiting for the perfect chance to discuss it. So, do you want to give us the rundown on what's new in there?
Yeah. Not a massive amount of brand new stuff. It's mostly, as you would expect, the new allegiance abilities, and new prayers for the Slaughter Priests. War Scroll wise, only 2 changes from everything that's been out so far, but they are good ones, so I can't complain.
Have they cranked up the cheese on anything?
Well, a little bit, yeah. With the, I don't have the Zinch book, but I'm going to guess like it's mostly in a similar vein to that. It's the Khorne book is absolutely loaded with new magic items and things that you can equip your heroes with. And
can I just make an educated guess? Do some of them contain either the word blood or the word skull?
Blood, skull, slaughter, those things. I'd love to know how many times the words blood and skull actually appear in this book as a whole. But
you could probably check if you've got the digital version.
That's true. Yeah, quite a lot.
Some of the juiciest parts then.
Well, if you want a screen share, I do have a few little bits.
Right, is this going to be like a Remington screen share where you've got everything on your computer in the same folder?
No.
Okay, good. There we go. That's nice and nudity free.
Yeah, I came prepared. Yeah, so this is just one of the new art. There's quite a few new art pieces in the book that are really, really quite nice. This is just the first one, and another. Those were just my 2 kind of favourites. This is the It's quite nice. It shows you the a sort of force organization thing for a bloodbound army, which I don't remember seeing before. Like this top part here, it has your Lord of Khorne in the middle, and all of his gore chosen, which are obviously the gore chosen is the kind of standalone game thing, but it's also the name for a Lord of Khorne's kind of his inner council, I guess, which are all the different heroes.
Is this just fluff, this bit here, or is there some kind of army construction method going on as well?
It's basically fluff. The army, you can pretty much just do what you want. So it's mostly fluff, these kind of things. What do we have next? These are us. Again, it's just, I thought it was just really cool to have all the pictures for each one, but it is, again, basically fluff.
Oh, are we going to find some cheese on this page? That looks like rules there.
Yeah, a little bit of cheese going on here. These are the command traits or command abilities that you can give your general. Obviously, there's three different tables. But you know, if your hero is most of the time you're going to have a sort of bloodbound heroes who are also obviously mortal. So you can choose from either table 1 or table 3, I guess, and the middle one is obviously just for the demons.
Is there anything that's mortal Khorne that isn't bloodbound?
Not that I could see, but maybe I was off the top of my head. Maybe it's referring to the Slave to Darkness units that you can give the Khorne keyword to.
Could be
because they wouldn't have the bloodbound keyword as well. They would only have the Khorne keyword. So I'm guessing it's just in case you take like something from that list, like a regular Chaos Lord or Lord or Manticore or something as your general, and decide to make him your character. But there are quite a few in the Khorne Mortal one. There is quite a nice ability there, Berserker Lord. So roll a dice each time your general suffers an unsaved wound or mortal wound in the combat phase. On a roll of a 5 or 6, the wound or mortal wound is ignored.
That's pretty nice. Just a ward save, pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Just anything that helps you against those mortal wounds is pretty useful.
Is that the main one that's jumped out at you, or any other particularly juicy ones in there?
There are, for me, some of them are not bad. Some of them are kind of meh. My favourite one from the Bloodbound thing was the Mark of the Cannibal. If your general slays one or more enemy models in the combat phase, they heal a wound at the end of the phase. Of course, that's just kind of adding to your general's long-term survivability.
Yeah, you're pretty much going to be slaying a model, aren't you?
Yeah, especially if he ends up fighting just, kind of run-of-the-mill regular troops.
So it might keep him alive for another turn.
Yeah, and even against elite troops, a Khorne general is generally pretty killy anyway. So.
You'll probably kill one, won't you? You'd also want to factor in how many wounds something has left, so you'd probably try to finish it off with him, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would say so. The demon ones, I'll be honest, like a lot of the demon stuff I haven't really paid as much attention to, because the demons have never kind of appealed to me that much, but they are starting to a bit more with this book, just because of the variety of options and things. Yeah. It's, with all these new options, it does make you, I'm guessing the Zinch book is the same, but it does make you kind of look at it in a different light and think, well, I could do with a Bloodthirster, or
Everyone could do with a Bloodthirster, really, couldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely, especially with the, well, I'll show you, I think it's up next, I think. I'll go to the...
Yeah, I have confidence that when you press that little next button, it's not going to be some bikini-clad woman.
No.
I'm just so used to Rem doing it, and it's scarred me for life.
So you've made me paranoid now. No. this is the blood blessings table, and this is every one of your slaughter priests has 2 prayers, but at the start of the game you can choose an additional one for each slaughter priest from this list, which is quite handy. Again, you know, the only thing with the Khorne priests is there's always a risk of injuring themselves, but you know, Khorne cares not. So, and my 2 favourite ones from this were Resanguination and Magebane Hex. Resanguination is if the prayer is successful, pick either the priest or a Khorne hero from your army within 16 inches, and it's visible. The model you picked immediately heals D3 wounds lost earlier in the battle.
I just imagine the Khorne warriors picking up the enemy and squeezing them like half a lemon and just drinking the blood and healing from it.
Pretty much, yeah. Now,
that's my official narrative spin on that rule.
No, it's not. No, it's relatively useful for, you know, for troops, not so much. But a Khorne army, and especially a Bloodbound army, pretty much all of the time is going to have the full 6 heroes that you can take, because obviously each of them have their own little part to play. So yeah, it's quite a useful one. But the Magebane Hex prayer stood out, especially with, you know, the kind of current popularity of Tzeentch. If this prayer is successful, then until your next hero phase, the priest can attempt to unbind 1 additional spell in the enemy hero phase in the same manner as a wizard.
And if there's lots of spells being thrown around, definitely.
Yep, and I'd say, you know, especially now, the majority of people playing Bloodbound are going to have more than 1 slaughter priest in their army.
It certainly seems that way.
Yeah, and also there's a couple other Khorne heroes, and so I think some of the battalion rules let you do it as well, but adding additional unbind attempts as well. So just to reflect the very anti-magic nature of Khorne, which is nice.
Certainly is.
But it's like we have, this is the kind of...
Uh-oh. Don't like the sound of that already.
No. This is their allegiance ability. If your army has the Khorne allegiance. And this is Blood Tithe. And how it works is whenever a unit is killed in the game, not just yours, but either yours or your opponent's, doesn't matter, because, you know, again, Khorne cares not. Whenever any unit dies, you get a Blood Tithe point. And as you can see, like, as with every point you get, you can build up, and then you get to spend them. When you spend them in your hero phase, they give you the kind of corresponding ability, and as you would expect, as they go on, the abilities get better and better.
That one there I can see right there, the Crimson Rain. So depending what kind of army you've taken there, if you've taken like nothing but spammed Bloodthirsters, for example, then all of them are likely to be wounded at any given time. So that could be a really good one to have, couldn't it?
Yeah, especially if in sort of conjunction with the Slaughter Priest's Resanguination prayer. It gives you a hell of a lot of character and monster healing ability.
Yeah, so as Khorne changed his ways a bit, he's not all about the shedding the blood, he's now about like, recycling it back in and stitching people up as well, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it's definitely given, I don't know, obviously Khorne would never use magic, but his priests would use prayers instead, which is basically just another way of saying magic. But
it's not real magic though, it's like dwarves striking runes, it doesn't count.
Yeah, basically, it doesn't count. Yeah, there's, as it goes up, we get to the very top one. For 8 Blood Tithe points, you may set up a new Khorne Demon unit anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches away from enemy models. It can't move in the movement phase, but you know, small price to pay if you've picked, a Bloodthirster or I don't know, Scarbrand.
So I'm going to assume that in match play you're going to have to pay the points for any model that you're going to bring in that way. Do Khorne have any other ways to summon units in?
Not think so. Not that I can remember. Again, unless I've missed one of the demons kind of abilities, because like I said, I sort of just skimmed that. But, as far as I know, this is the only one that I've seen for summoning. Because Khorne isn't really that big on magic, so. But again, even if I've missed something, and even if this is the only thing, it's still a pretty. It's not going to. In the average game, it's not going to take long for 8 things to die.
Right. So before you go on to the next picture, I'm going to whiz through the comments here and pick out any nice interesting ones. So Demon_Lizard, if you paint your airships orange or a Flying Dutchman. Yes, that's probably true. I'm leaning towards using some orange, but a lot of light blue, I think, on mine. Then let's see, anything else? Kiblams, long-time lurker, first-time commenter. Hi. Yeah, I've seen you, Kiblams, commenting on some other people's live shows, but not one of mine. So now we know you've just been lurking in the shadows all these years. Let's see what else. Green Stuff Games. She's apparently painting an Arcanaut company and loving life. Yes, I can see how those two things would go hand in hand. Painting an Arcanaut company and your love for life will go up, I imagine. They do look very fun to paint, and I'm looking forward to getting to mine soon. Let's see. Oh,
I just noticed Thomas, only single word Thomas. Just threw in. Something I never thought of. A Chaos Sorcerer could be given the Khorne keyword, and he can summon.
Ooh, well there you go. So if you're doing that, then perhaps you'll already have a summoning pool, and that's just another way to access it. Maybe if you cast a dice, perhaps.
Yeah.
So interesting. Let's see other comments. Drunken Deer. Is there a dwarven hero called Jason? Clearly a rip-off from Argonauts. Yes, there probably will be. Many people are going to be naming their dwarves Jason, just so you can hang around with all the Arcanauts. A few people talking about Frostgrave. So we're not going to mention that because this is an Age of Sigmar show. Although I've heard it's good. I've never actually played it, though. Let's see. Demon_Lizard are just building my Fire Slayers. Well, you're a bit behind the times, aren't you there, Lizard? It's all about the Kharadron Overlords now. Fire Slayers are so last season. Let's see, what else have we got here? More people talking about Frostgrave. People are saying it's a lot of fun. Okay, continuing, scrolling down. Anything else juicy? We've got quite a lot of names in here now that I haven't seen before. Lannis03. Just got my frigates and Arcanauts today. How many frigates did you get? I've seen one person that ordered 3 and posted some pictures on Facebook. Is that the most anyone's got? Let's see. Continuing. People talking about how amazing all these Kharadron Overlord miniatures are, which is certainly true. Scrolling down. I wondered no one yelled blood for the blood god when Andy mentioned his nose bleeding. Yeah, they didn't actually, did they? I would have expected you to, actually, being a Khorne enthusiast. Hangout. So you missed a trick there.
I didn't want you to back out of the show thinking that it was an omen of some kind.
It could have been, actually. On the eve of doing a partially Khorne-related show, there could be something in that. Well, I'll arrange a Nurgle episode for a couple of weeks and see if I just suddenly break out in pustules or something. It's entirely possible. Let's see. Charlie Banks, I like that they're on 25mm bases. I don't know what he's talking about there. I think that's the Thunderers he's talking about. So yes, they're on 25mm, I think. Or no, actually, that's the smaller ones he was talking about. 25mm are the small bases, aren't they? So he was talking about the Arcanauts being on 25mm.
So are they?
Nice and small. And then the Arcanaut Admiral is on the bigger base, which I think is the new Space Marine size base.
32?
Yes, I think so. And I think the Thunder is probably on that size as well because they're a bit beefier. Although I could have another look now just to confirm. so we're not giving anyone false information here. But it looks like the Thunderers are on larger bases. Let's see. Checking the old page now. Yep, 32 round bases for the Thunderers. Okay, continuing to look down the chat here. Anything else? Nick Trajano, if you add an attack to a weapon with d6 attacks, do you get 2d6 shots or d6 plus 1 shots? That would depend on the wording of the rule, I think. If it says you get to shoot again, then you would do all of it. If it says just add 1 to their attack characteristic, then I would imagine it would be d6 plus 1. Let's see. Continuing down. We've only had one dirty, filthy, abusive spammer tonight, by the way. So let's hope we don't get any more. Let's see. How about those Kharadron Overlord flying stands, says Lawrence Jameson. Well, I've got one in my hand. Almost in my hand right now, actually. And here it is. So I can confirm that it's not particularly flexible, but it does feel sturdy. Watch me break it now live on the show. But it does feel better than the old flying stands, and I would be pretty confident using this in a game. It's thicker, and I'm sure they've precision engineered it so the angle of the stand allows much more strength going into the base of a ship. I haven't heard of any of them breaking yet. I've heard tales of them drooping on these things, if maybe there's not the level of tightness. Inside the, just pointing to the little hole there on the underside of the ship, that's where it's going to go. So maybe if someone's got a bit of a gap between the two sides of their ship, maybe it wouldn't fit in there as snugly and there'd be a bit of bending going on. But some people, of course, magnetize. Some people drill a hole through the top of this and then through the ship as well to have some extra security. But we'll see. They've obviously gone experimental with these because it's been a while since they used flying stands, hasn't it, for any models? Because the Stormcast that have been flying are generally on those floating bits of parchment. There was a 40k model that was similar. Things like the Bloodthirster are on their tiptoes. You've got the Celestant Prime and Nagash that are on swirly business, attaching them to the ground. So the flying stands are back, re-engineered, precision Dwardin engineering. We'll see if they hold up, won't we? Let's see. Anything else? Mickey Jennifer says fluff is important.
Mm-hmm.
Can't argue with that. That's what gets a lot of people into these games and keeps them hooked. Right, so we've run through all that. Let's jump back into the cornflakes, shall we?
Sure. Where is Gritcher?
So we'll have another comment roundup in a few minutes after we've analysed some more of the cornate goodness. So, where were we?
Yep. Oh, yeah, we're still on the Blood Tithe table. And yeah, I noticed in the comments, but yeah, I should point out there's a couple of really good sort of middling abilities in the Blood Tithe table, like Apoplectic Frenzy. Select a Khorne unit from your army. That unit can immediately pile in and attack as if it were the combat phase. And if you're picking something, one of your units like, you know, Wrathmongers or one of the bigger kind of hittier things like Bloodthirsters.
Yeah, so that's in the hero phase, isn't it?
Yeah, that's in the hero phase. So that's before any other kind of...
That sounds like a really potent one to me.
So then that's, you know, you can use the Blood Tithe. I'm well, really sure, I'll just check, but I'm fairly certain you can use your Blood Tithe abilities in your opponent's hero phase.
Can you? Because that would be very interesting if you could pile in an attack during the enemy hero phase. If you could, that would be amazing.
Where are we?
Yeah, before anyone runs off and starts trying to do this in the game, let's get confirmation.
Yep, Blood Tithe points can be expended at any point in either player's hero phase.
Wow.
But only once per phase.
So really, as soon as the enemy hero phase starts, you can just announce, right, I'm cashing in some of my points before you do anything. Yep, and then at that point there, the game just stops, and then you pile in an attack, and then they can carry on with their hero phase.
Yep, pretty much.
That sounds very, very good. Chaotic Neutral says already done it. So I'm going to assume people have already been using this. That sounds very, very powerful, shall we say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Once
Anything
you've
that,
got into the meat of the enemy's army as well, and you're among all their heroes that would want to be using abilities, and normally you'd think, well, if the enemy gets the next turn, if they get the first crack at this battle round, then we're going to be a bit screwed here because they're going to use those hero abilities and put mortal wounds on us. But then you can just pile in an attack with one potentially really powerful unit there. So I think that's a really strong ability.
of course, 7 and 8 are also rather tasty. You have Brass Skull Meteor. Pick a single unit anywhere on the battlefield. That unit immediately suffers D3 mortal wounds. In addition, roll a dice for each unit within 8 inches of the unit you picked. On a roll of 4 or more, the unit being rolled for suffers a mortal wound.
Well, that's pretty tasty as well. If someone's got multiple small units or heroes scattered together, you want to just be putting...
I think that could be the chaff killer.
Yep.
And Relentless Fury. Until your next hero phase, each time a Khorne model in your army is slain in the combat phase, you can make a pile-in move and then attack with the model before you remove it. Use the lowest line on the damage table, if it has one, on its war scroll when resolving the attack.
So if you feel like you're about to lose a lot of models that turn, that would be the time to cash that one in, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Go down swinging on the enemy's turn.
That's the one if you're, one of your models is in combat with something you know it's going to lose to.
It's an interesting application for that, though, because if you decide to cash in that Relentless Fury in the enemy hero phase and they were lining up charges, they might think twice about actually following through on all those charges.
Yeah, it's definitely a sort of think again ability, especially if they're attacking with something that's maybe has already taken some wins and lost some numbers itself, and this might just nudge it over the edge.
There is an observation from Thomas here. The Thomas. It says apoplectic frenzy should be more expensive than brass skull.
Yeah, yeah, it should be. They should swap them about.
It's not that big of a deal. 5 and 6. It's not that big of a difference, really. So how easy is it to gather up all these points exactly?
I've only played one little game using the new rules, but yeah, really easy. You think about any given game that you've had, and how quickly, because it's not just obviously like units. It's not just obviously like big units, but sort of characters count as units as well. So it's just anything.
So any unit that dies, you get a point.
You get a point, and obviously even
your own as well.
Even your own, yep, just anything at all.
So even if the enemy doesn't bring any chaff, you can kamikaze your chaff into them and stack up blood tithe points.
And that's pretty much what Blood Reavers were made for. So.
What's the smallest unit number you can take Blood Reavers?
10. And 10.
How many points are they?
I believe they are 70 now.
That's not much of a price to pay if you need to get a couple more points to unlock one of these really nasty abilities, is it?
Yep, 70 points for 10. They used to be 60, but now they're 70.
I mean, even some of the lower down abilities sound quite nice.
Yeah, again, there's that Spell Eater curse, which is, kind of like the Slaughter Priest's Magebane Hex prayer. It's kind of useful against sort of Zench armies. Choose this reward immediately after a wizard has cast a spell anywhere on the battlefield. It's automatically unbound. You may not choose the reward after having attempted to unbind the spell, but
So what I imagine Khorne to be now, it's like a toolbox. One of those toolboxes where you open the lid and it's got 2 compartments there just below the lid with your drill bits and whatnot in there. But then below, you pull them aside like they swing open, and then there's the entire rest of the box under there, which is basically this table.
Mm-hmm.
Tasty indeed.
Pretty much. So yeah, there's Khorne. I mean, Khorne was a fairly solid army before, but now it's given it that little sort of nudge in the right direction towards kind of next level. It's probably not quite up there with Zinch, but close. I reckon if if you take the right things and right abilities, you could certainly give a Tzeentch army a good run for its money.
Right, what do we have next?
Next up,
If that wasn't enough.
Next up, I've just picked a few of the kind of either quite good or just quite fun War Scroll battalions, and this one, this one's the Council of Blood, and it is 3 to 8 Bloodthirsters. That's all.
3 to 8 Bloodthirsters. Well, I've seen that played on. I haven't actually seen it in person, but I've seen on screen numerous times people taking 3 to 8 Bloodthirsters as the majority of the army.
Well, now it's an actual thing. But I did see just at the weekend there, Ben Johnson took this battalion to South Coast GT. And I was going to say, oh well, it must be quite a strong thing if he took it, but I believe he came last.
Oh dear.
I believe he came 182nd out of 182 players.
That's not a big ringing endorsement for the Council of Blood, then, is it?
Yeah, no, not really. And I think at the last minute he kind of switched out a couple of the Bloodthirsters for 3 units of Bloodletters. And he had Scarbrand in his army as well, but even at that, I guess it wasn't quite enough.
What does it actually do then? How does it give bonuses to your Bloodthirsters?
Well, this Lords of Battle ability lets them, every one of them can use their command ability in your hero phase.
Do they have a nice command ability?
Yes, they do. I'll just double check what it is. I think I know off the top of my head, but I'll just double check.
Is it something like you may actually decapitate your opponent for real at the start of the turn?
Maybe not quite as handy as that, but it would be pretty fluffy, wouldn't it?
It would. That'd be the kind of thing they would have put in when they were getting the old armies aligned with Age of Sigmar. If you actually decapitate your opponent, you get +1 to hit in that round of combat.
The Bloodthirsters actually have quite different. The 3 different kinds of Bloodthirster have different command abilities. The Bloodthirster of Unfettered Fury. If a Bloodthirster of Unfettered Fury uses his ability, until your next hero phase, Khorne demon units within 8 inches of the model, when they pile in, can move up to 6 inches instead of 3.
That is pretty tasty.
Yep.
Does that mean they can pile in if they're within 6 inches, or?
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So they can. So they're basically their range of being locked in combat is longer.
It's bigger. Yeah. It's basically just giving them a 6-inch pile-in move instead of a 3.
Some units have a similar thing, except they still have to be within 3, but then they can pile in 6, which allows them to kind of jump over models and things like that.
Mm-hmm. We have the Bloodthirster of Insensate Rage, and his command ability is, in your next charge phase, you can re-roll dice when determining the charge distance for any demon units within 8 inches. So that's just, helping make sure that you don't fail any of your charges. It's not a bad one.
If you're using all of them, of course. It's not like you're losing out on anything.
Yeah, and with that War Scroll battalion ability, you will be using all of them. And last but not least, the Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirsters is for Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster uses this ability. Select a unit of Khorne demons within 16 inches. Until your next hero phase, this unit can run and charge in the same turn, and you can add 1 to its run and charge rolls. So again, that's a little something extra to make sure that your Khorne units are getting into combat quicker, which is where they really want to be.
And I spotted in the other ability up there as well, how basically if you kill something with a Bloodthirster, you can then choose to pile in an attack with the next one because they're in fierce competition with each other. That sounds pretty nasty as well, if the enemy has no way to interrupt you at all.
Yeah. But I can see why for that last ability. I see why Ben Johnson took the blood letters with him instead of one or two of the bloodthirsters, and used those command abilities to help get them into combat. But yeah, I'm guessing it didn't really work out that well in the end. Oh well.
Up against unrepentant cheese as well.
Yeah, and I'm fairly certain it was a Zinch-based Skyfire list that pretty much won it in the end.
Someone was saying that there was a Zinch list with 4 greater demons in there.
There was, yeah. There was. I was kind of skimming the stuff on Twitter, the pictures, and I think I remember and it was down to the last few players, and it was basically a Zinch fest. As you'd expect.
All very well until the next General's Handbook comes out and changes all their points, of course.
Yeah, basically.
Dark Feast, that sounds like a dessert.
Yeah. A dessert that you probably wouldn't want to eat.
Probably not, looking at the fact that it's in the Khorne book.
No, this one is it's a fairly simple one. A Slaughter Priest, Bloodstoker, and 3 to 6 units of Blood Reavers. And this is quite a nice one. The Slaughter Priest can incite the Dark Feast to a terrible feeding frenzy. As long as he is alive, add 1 to the attack characteristics of any melee weapons used by a unit from this battalion whenever it is selected to attack. As we know, like with that given to Blood Reavers is quite nice, but pretty much everybody is going to have be having a Blood Secretor as well, which with his kind of totem thing, the Portal of Skulls, it also gives them another attack.
Yeah, there have been people posting in the comments all different ways you can just stack up ridiculous numbers of attacks on some of these models. It does get quite crazy when all these synergies come together. Yeah,
there's a even more so now, but there's kind of always been a lot of synergy to be had between the Khorne models and the Bloodstoker that's in the unit on his own. He'll be. Yep, you can add for the Bloodstoker. You can add 3 to all runner charge rolls for a unit, and they can re-roll their wound rolls of 1s. And that's just his kind of standard ability, and obviously he has this battalion ability as well, of not the Blood Reavers not needing to take battle shock tests, which for Blood Reavers could be quite handy.
I would imagine, because they're not exactly known for their survivability, are they, compared to how much pain they dish out?
Yeah, they are. I mean, they can be buffed like crazy and given all these kind of extra attacks and rerolls and stuff, but they are still basically your chaff.
Yeah, I don't see too many ways to buff their save, for example.
Yeah, pretty much. So this was one of my kind of favorite ones. This one I like. I know a lot of people prefer Wrathmongers, just for their ability to kill things and make those things kill themselves. And Wrathmongers are quite crazy, but I'd always kind of preferred Skull Reapers.
Hold on, before we go on, I have to do a reading of this because it looks quite fun. Driven to frenzied fury by the Bloodstoker's cruel, barbed lash, the warriors of a skull take reap heads by the 100. Hulking Korgoraths lumber along in their wake, hungrily devouring those skulls deemed unworthy of a place in the skull take's towering osseous ziggurats.
Nice.
There we go. You may continue.
Thank you. Yeah. So this one I really like because, well, I really like Skull Reapers and I have a fair few of them myself. So this would be one War Scroll battalion I would be taking. And then you have the Bloodstoker, who again is, of course, he's given his little ability to add 3 to the running charge rolls for a unit that he's whipped, and obviously they can re-roll their wound rolls, which is, giving buffs to Skull Reapers is always good. It makes them just even that bit more dangerous. 2 to 3 units is
cleanable as well. These
like what? What's it?
Cleanable, these battalions, don't they?
Yeah.
There's not a huge amount of units that you need to take them.
No, they generally are quite a relatively low unit count, especially if you've started with the EOS starter box.
That's what annoyed me a little bit about the Stormcast book. There are a few in there that are just completely unrealistic, especially for me, that require multiple units of really expensive models. Yeah,
I didn't notice that. I do have a Stormcast army, but just the the stuff that I got from the starter box plus a few extras. But I did buy the new Stormcast book, just for some reading material and background, just out of interest. Yeah, some of the War Scroll battalions are a bit much, like as in monetary value much.
The only one I've actually used so far, I think, is the Stormcast one with 6 heroes, which is actually quite a powerful one, but of course that's a huge amount of points on not many models.
Yeah. Sorry. So for the Skull Take, its main strength seems to be there's a good kind of synergy in this one between the Skull Reapers and the Korgoraths, especially if you take 2 of them. The Skull Hungry ability is for each skull that the Skull Reapers take as a trophy, a dozen are lost with the Korgoraths, blah blah blah. Main bit. The Korgoraths will make 8 attacks with their claws and fangs rather than 5, as long as they're within 6 inches of the battalion's Skull Reapers. It doesn't sound like a big deal at first, but the Korgorath's War Scroll has been changed. He's a little more expensive now, by 20 points. But now that his claws and fangs, they are, well, the base is 5 attacks, but obviously with this you have 8. There are 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend, and they're now 2 damage. They used to be 1.
That's pretty significant when you're looking at 8 attacks.
Yeah, so that's 8 attacks at, potentially a -1 rend and 2 damage. And if your Bloodstoker is whipping them, whipping the Korgoraths instead of the Skull Reapers, they'll be re-rolling any 1s they got for their 2 wound rolls. It just makes that a little bit more likely that will go through, nice. which is quite cool. Also, just as a little kind of a nice side note, the Korgorath also got the Bloodbound keyword added to its War Scroll, which is nice.
That is nice. I wonder why it didn't have it previously.
Yeah, because weirdly enough, it didn't have it before.
It's maybe the most Khorne looking thing they've made.
Yeah, and considering it was included in the starter box, which was, Stormcast versus Bloodbound, you'd think it would have had it, but no.
Well, at least it's been corrected.
Yeah. And the other ability with this one is the Reaping Strikes. Skull Reapers from the Skull Take within 12 inches of their Bloodstoker are in a Frenzied Fury. If the wound roll for a Skull Reaper in Frenzied Fury is some word that I can't see, it's a 6 or higher, add 1 to the damage characteristic of the weapons they're using. The Skull Take contain the maximum number of units at the start of the battle. This ability applies to all Skull Take units that are within 12 inches of the Bloodstoker, which is quite nice.
That sounds outrageous, doesn't it?
Yeah, and again, like you said, considering that the maximum amount of units isn't actually that much, that's not so bad. For the bottom one, for the 0 to 2 units in any combination, Blood Warriors or Blood Reavers, you get them in the starter box, so you're probably going to have them anyway. And you'll have at least 1 Korgorath in the starter box as well, and the Bloodstoker. So it's really just the Skull Reapers you have to get.
It does sound like a tasty one.
Yep.
I'm noticing that there is quite a lot of blood-soaked cheese to be had in here, isn't there?
Yeah. There is a fair amount of blood-soaked cheese if you know where to look. But again, Khorne was a good
I'm sure when Mr. Remington next gets out his Khorne army, he will just ignore all of this.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, if if he really wants to give Khorne another, I remember him saying that he didn't. He tried them once, I think, and he just didn't.
He tried one game and
like
he walked into a load of Stormcast bows and was killed.
Yeah, I mean that happens to everyone.
Yeah, so it's going to happen from time to time, isn't it? He wasn't satisfied with how slow they were. He wanted a bit more speed.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. But with all these kind of new abilities and things, you should definitely give them another crack. But I guess he would have to buy the book.
Before we start this one, a couple of people have been asking when the new Bretonnian book is coming out. I think there's been some kind of time warp going on. There's people talking about Rogue Trader 2.0, asking what the battle tome is. So I think the chat has actually been teleported to some point in the 90s.
Should I just start saying army book instead of battle tome, or would that be too backward?
That might make these people feel a bit more at home, actually.
I'll try and remember that.
Right, I see the word blood again in giant letters, so this has got to be good.
It appears a lot, doesn't it? Now this is the blood forged one, which is again is relatively nuts. And this one is a skull grinder, 2 to 4 units of Wrathmongers, and 0 to 3 units of Blood Warriors. Again, this is like I mentioned, a lot of people do prefer the Wrathmongers, so a lot of people are going to have a lot of those. And the Blood Aegis ability for this, for the Blood Forged, attack has ever been the best form of defense. For the blood they spill hardens upon their flesh until it is proof against all but the sharpest blade. When you make save rolls for this unit in the combat phase, ignore the enemy's rend characteristic unless it is a -2 or better.
Ouch.
Yeah, so any -1 rend weapons that they're coming into contact with will do nothing to them.
Tasty.
Yep, pretty handy. And infectious bloodletting is when the blood forge crash into the enemy battle line. So potent is their ferocity that their mere proximity can cause even the most disciplined soldier to lose control. Roll a dice for each enemy model within 3 inches of a blood forged model at the start of each of your hero phases. On the roll of a 6, you can immediately attack, but not pile in, with all of the melee weapons of the enemy model being rolled, or as though they were part of your army. The model can attack its own unit and even itself. I thought that was a pretty fun one. Yes. It conjures up a nice mental image of something like Retributors smashing themselves in the face with their own hammers.
Yeah, I think there should actually be a little asterisk there, and at the bottom it tells you that you can't use it on Retributors.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of Star Soul maces being swung around in the wrong direction there.
Yeah, lucky I don't have any. That might be alright.
Oh, did you? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's not so bad. You're refraining them. But yeah, that was a nice little one. Especially as the Wrathmongers already have a kind of similar kind of ability to this one. The Wrathmongers have their own abilities called Blood Fury. And each time a Wrathmonger is slain in the combat phase, the blood drives the enemy into a berserk rage, which they can no longer tell friend from foe. You can choose an enemy model that is within 2 inches of the slain model and immediately attack with the enemy model you chose as though it were part of your army. So it's basically letting you do the same thing again.
So really, you don't want to be close to these guys at all, do you?
Yeah.
You want to get in there, kill them, and then not be around them anymore would be the ideal situation.
Yeah, so they can make you attack yourself, and if you kill one of them, they'll definitely make you attack yourself.
How I would like to imagine it is the unit it grabs the guy's arm and starts swinging it around at his own troops, or even into his own head, like, you're hitting yourself.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's how we should visualize it for fluff purposes.
I would love that if the picture at the top here had been sort of an artwork piece of exactly that, rather than just of the miniatures included.
There is those models actually. The one swinging his flaming hammerhead thing around.
The
There's
angle.
a really nice display at Warhammer World of the Khorne taking on some Stormcast, and there's a couple of action poses where the Stormcast are being decapitated by Khorne warriors swinging their weapons around, and
Nice.
it's very, very nice. If anyone's going to Warhammer World, then you should definitely check out that. I think that's one of the new displays they've got.
Nice. Interestingly enough, the Skull Grinder character that's in this one, he's a bit of an underrated character himself, because in his attack profile, of course, like the Blood Secretor can give him an extra attack, as it can do with anything else. But the Skull Grinder has only 2 attacks, but it's a 3 up to hit, 2 up to wound, -1 rend, and 3 damage as his kind of base. And yeah, not really anything else. Well, especially in the kind of the Bloodbound list has a kind of straight 3 damage.
That's pretty handy. Charlie Banks says that infectious bloodletting is hilarious, which out of context is an amazing quote, by the way.
Yeah. So yeah, he's totally right. It's just, it makes me like, if you were gonna take this one and be kind of serious with it, you would take the full 4 units of Wrathmongers and just have all of your opponents killing themselves, which could be fun.
Yeah, I don't like the sound of that one bit.
No. We've got next. Oh yeah, this was more just for, you know, I really liked that they included this in the book. So obviously this, you'll know that the Stormcast book has these War Scroll battalions for different, I was going to say chapters of Stormcast, chambers. The different chambers, like, you know, the Hammers of Sigmar and Hallowed Knights and Anvils of the Helden Hammer and stuff like that. I thought it would just be them that got stuff like that, but no. Khorne has 2.
2?
Yep, just these 2 for now. Which
Are
are
they any
specific. They're alright. They're not too bad, but then they are quite. These are the ones where you need a lot of stuff, and then, like, obviously you have to have. Well, you don't have to have specific battalions, but you do have to have a fair amount of these kind of units. And again, I'm not going to mention the "does it have to be painted like that" argument, because I can't imagine many sort of fluffy gamers would really care about that.
I imagine they wouldn't. And
No.
with Khorne, you're probably covered in blood most of the time anyway, so you wouldn't notice.
Yeah, pretty much. That makes sense.
Just drown everything in blood effects and you'll be fine.
Yeah, basically. This first one is the Gore-Tide, which is Korgos Kull's army. Who's the named character from the starter box, who is amazingly still alive in the fluff. I was fairly certain he would have been dead by now, but that's nice. And this one is for another tribe that come into it later on in the story, which is quite cool. I like that they're including these War Scroll battalions for armies that are appearing in the fluff now, which is quite nice. Isn't really, it isn't really something that you kind of had for specific armies, say in like in 8th edition, where you would have, you know, if you had a Chaos army, it was, you know, Tzeentch, Khorne, Nurgle, or Slaanesh, but it wouldn't be, you know, if it was a Khorne army, it wouldn't be a specific Khorne faction within a faction kind of thing. So I know they've been doing that for ages with like the Space Marine chapters in 40k, but it's nice that they're transferring that little bit more kind of personalization over to AOS.
It is indeed. So, have you got any other pictures to show from here?
Just, I think we've already kind of covered this, because I just snapped the Blood Reavers one. Just this is the only difference to the Blood Reavers profile is right here. They've now got a 6-up save.
That's a big deal, actually, because of the way the terrain rules work. They couldn't actually gain a save before, could they?
Yep, no. They could never have.
They can. They can get a better save than that through various means.
Oh, yeah. Not only did they have to have that 6-up save, but kind of, as we know, there's a lot of buffing cheesemongering going on in the Khorne army now. So, yeah, that's pretty good.
It's nice to see.
And if you did include, like Thomas had mentioned earlier, if you did include a Chaos Sorcerer from the Slave to Darkness list and gave him the Khorne keyword, he could be summoning demons and using Mystic Shield on the Blood Reavers.
Well, after seeing all that and looking at some of the comments, I think I'm going to be scouring eBay to build my Grunstock Thunderers with 5 of those super long-range mortars.
Good plan. Just kill them from a distance before they get there. And yeah, again, this was just the Coregrass one, like I mentioned. He now has the Bloodbound keyword thrown in, and he has an extra point of damage onto his claws and fangs, which is nice.
It certainly is, especially with the ability to boost his number of attacks.
Yeah, he's gone up a little bit in points, but it's only 20 points. So for that extra point of damage, I think it's definitely worth it. Especially, everyone that plays. Oh no, sorry. Well, everyone that's bought the starter box and likes Khorne, has a Coregraph, so it's just that little bit of extra reason to use it. And this was just, I included this in because, I think it's pretty handy for any Khorne players to not forget that you can literally take anything from this Slaves to Darkness list and just give it a Khorne keyword now.
You've got some nice chaff potential there, even with the Marauders, only 60 points for 10.
Yeah, and the Marauders can have a shield as well.
I assume you can buff the Marauders with various abilities since they all have nice keywords in there now. Yep,
since the Marauders are pretty kind of base stats, they're pretty comparable to the Blood Reavers. But if your Marauders have I think they call them like Darkwood shields or something, but they're just shields. And then it takes them to a 5-up save. And obviously with their Khorne keyword now, they're susceptible to all of the buffs dished out by all the Khorne heroes, which is nice.
Very nice indeed.
Yeah, and this also gives you kind of access to kind of some kind of nasty stuff like the Gore-Beast chariots and demon princes and so on and so on, which is always nice. I think that's us back to that.
Okay, so it's looking you didn't have anything else lurking in that folder, Remington style, for the people to see, which would have been highly embarrassing. And we need to go back and blur out part of the live video afterwards.
Yeah, there was just that one little slight note left. It was an old model. It was the Slaughter Brute, and it's now also been, I think it was last week or the week before, it's now been given the Khorne keyword, and it didn't have it before.
Right, but so it doesn't have the Bloodbound keyword.
No, it still doesn't have the Bloodbound keyword. But giving it that Khorne keyword does make it very includable in your army now, because it is such a. I'll just come off the screenshot. Oh, it is quite a cool sort of model, and it just so happens I've had one of them lying around for ages that I've never got around to. And the only thing, I love them, the model, but the only thing that had been putting me off about putting it together was just the fact that it didn't have any of the relevant keywords.
That kit can also be built into the Tzeentch one, can't it?
Yeah. So it's kind of surprising they didn't do it sooner, since it's kind of a dual marketable kit.
So while it was terrible, you didn't get drawn in by the Lord of Change.
Yeah, no, Tzeentch has never really been my thing. So, but it's quite cool being able to assemble it. It's a kit that appeals to Khorne players and Tzeentch players now, because obviously the Slaughter Brute variant got the Khorne keyword, and the Mutilated Vortex Beast got the Tzeentch keyword.
Tasty. So, out of 10, how would you rate this new Khorne Battle Tome?
and cheese level, it's not quite Zinch, but I would give it since it's about that right level, and it's Khorne's number of choice, I would give it an 8.
An 8. So you could give it 8 skulls soaked in blood, like a high 8.
Yep, 8 brass skulls out of 10.
Right, let's head back to the comments. There's a suggestion I'm going to not exactly agree with here. So, Russell Higgins says, GW needs to speed up the release of the Sky Dwarves. No, they don't. They need to continually just drip feed the community with flying dwarves so I don't go bankrupt. Because if they release them all at once, that would be bad.
Yeah.
Let's see, Nick Trajano thinks the Sky Dwarves would stomp the Bloodbound. I don't know if they'd stomp them exactly. Their boots don't exactly look that stumpy, to be honest. I'm looking at an Arcanaut now. His boots, I don't think he could crush too many Khorne warriors under those little dainty shoes he's got there.
No, but I reckon in a few months or whatever, when you're finished painting up your army, I reckon that's something we could find out.
We could. I'm sure I could mercilessly gun down lots of Khorne's finest.
I'm sure I could chaff the hell out of them.
I'm sure you could try your best. Let's see, any other interesting comments here? People just basically talking about how amazing AOS is. And a bit of love for Kings of War there in the chat as well. Not so much for 40k right now, but should just mention briefly, I suppose, that they are fixing 40k by basically AOSifying some of the rules. If Age of Sigmar was the guinea pig, then they're finally ready to experiment on humans now with 40k. So we'll see what happens with that. It's going to be very, very interesting, definitely. And hopefully people that play Age of Sigmar will be able to get into 40k without great expense of needing 1,000 books and without the capacity to hold 2 vastly different rule sets in your head. Because there are going to be some similarities now. Oh, Dreddy's made a comment here. Scuttling Overlords will be the new competitive force of 2017.
I'm not too sure about that, but you never know.
I'm not entirely sure. Scuttlings, though, they do have those 8 legs. They could be burrowing and kind of stowaways on the sky ships, couldn't they, I suppose? You wouldn't necessarily spot them if they're just dangling underneath. They could be the scuttling danglers, they could be called, and they could cling to the bottom of enemy flyers. What do you think of that, GW? See, Remington's not even here, and we've got $1 million idea, and it's undoubtedly going to be stolen by Games Workshop by the end of the week.
I think so. I think if they do really sort of simplify those rules and lower the kind of the startup sort of investment, not investment as in money, but time to learn kind of thing, I would be tempted to get into it. I much prefer fantasy, but there is a fair amount of stuff in 40k that I really like. Not so much Space Marines, but I do like the Skitarii. Is it what they're called? They're quite cool.
Yes.
Yeah, they're quite cool minis.
Dino Titan Edition has just arrived and said, "What? We're still live? Yes, we are. It's a slightly later start than usual, and there's no Remington falling asleep, so we're able to go a little bit longer." And finally, for today, we'll just breeze through some of the wonderful painted miniatures from the Andy and Rem Show Facebook group, which, if you're not a member of already, you should be joining it up immediately, everybody. Even those of you who don't use Facebook probably should, just for that purpose. Not mentioning anyone in particular, but maybe somebody who's actually on this show right now might want to do that. So here is a modified, a custom Slanesh steed, shall we say, by Rimka. And
nice.
That's a very interesting use of Tyranids, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it. I've been using a few Tyranid bits and pieces in a recent Ironjaw's army I did. So, yeah.
Doesn't look too out of place. And it's, as far as her crazy conversions go, this is one of the least bizarre, I think. There's some really zany ones that we've seen over the last few weeks on Facebook.
I think of all the 40k range, the Tyranids actually kind of make sense. Like, if they showed up in the AOS, in the 9 realms, that'd be fine.
Since they ate all the squat, maybe they'll just find some kind of gap in the fabric of reality and make their way over and try and eat all the Dwarden, because they've got a taste for short things with beards now.
Sure. Sure.
Next, this is from Amy, and well,
Whoa.
what more do you expect from her at
Yeah.
this stage? It's all just outrageous, and with it being Nurgle as well, when you can really just go nuts on things. Look at that flesh. The thing that immediately draws my eye is that huge, horrible pink. It just looks like a freshly picked scab or something, doesn't it? The flesh.
Yeah, I can from the recent sort of Nurgle painting of my own, I can definitely attest that those kind of effects aren't always easy to pull off and look good. But yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
It's easy to paint Nurgle, but to get to the top level, it does still take quite a lot of skill to get some of these really the more grotesque of the effects to come off.
I will say that the technical paints, like Rise of Rust and Nillic Oxide, and especially Nurgle's Rot, make it a bit easier. But to get that sort of really realistic looking wounds and injuries, you do have to be that sort of Amy's level.
And you do have to have something of a twisted mind, I'm sure, as well, to visualize what does a mangled torso look like.
Yeah, that helps.
Next, this is from Andrew, and I'm sure Mr. Remington would be pleased with this. He does like his eyeballs, and look at that. Look at all the Zinchian goodness going on here. Wow.
When I see like the Zinch miniatures and the kind of, well, most of the time the bright colours and all that, it makes me glad that I'm not that into Zinch, because I don't think I could really paint all that.
And you know what I think I've spotted? I think I've seen that there's some dusting going on here with the feathers. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can see it all the way down.
Definite dusting there.
On the top, on the staff as well, and the cloak.
Yeah, safe to say there's no dusting on the eyeballs though.
No, not yet anyway.
Yeah, you need a steady hand for that kind of work, don't you?
And a nice touch of gloss varnish to finish it off.
Here's another one from him as well.
Oh, the dreaded Skyfire.
Indeed, and nice little gems there. They're not quite in focus on this picture, but there's more pictures of these on the Facebook group if you want to look. He's got quite a few miniatures, but you can see some more of the gems, one on that wrist there. Very, very nice. I always find gems really difficult, even though I know technically how to do it. People have told me the correct steps to actually achieve that look, but I've never been confident enough to actually attempt it yet.
Yeah, I've always tried the, everyone, especially if you've been in the hobby for a while, we've all seen the old GW tutorial using the high elf gems, but it's just like one, maybe two colours and then a blob of white. But it never quite worked for me.
Very, very effective here.
Yeah, that looks great.
This is from Brent, and this is another very, very tasty miniature. Let's zoom out a bit on that one so you can see more of it. I mean, look at that. How would you even ride a horse with all this going on?
That banner looks way too heavy.
It does. It looks good, though.
Yeah, it looks great. It's kind of awkward carrying a banner on a lance as well, but I mean, I'm guessing the guy's a pro.
I'm guessing that he's like got the reins of the horse tied around his groinal region, I'm going to assume. Mm-hmm. Which seems really dangerous. If you ever get thrown off the horse, that would be bad.
Yeah, I really like the base. He's done it as well with it rising up in the rock and the little, is that an Ironbreaker's shield?
It certainly looks like one, but there's no evidence that he's actually killed an Ironbreaker, so I'm going to assume that he's friends with the Ironbreakers and one of them has just put their shield down while they're having a picnic. Yeah,
well, they have sort of similar colours, so I'm going to guess they're from the same army.
Yeah, they've got to be friends. Yeah. Okay, next. This is from Sam, who came over to the game in progress at Warhammer World the other day. Cool. So he got to meet the Orange Legend, and he also got to meet some guy named Remington as well, but that wasn't quite so exciting for him. But we saw one of these quite a few months ago, and it looks like he's actually finished it now. Nice. So even back then it looked really good, and I was wondering what more he could actually do with it, but obviously this answers that question. There's a lot more variation in the colour on the bone than there used to be.
I did see someone in the local Games Workshop in Glasgow with a Death army, and he had some of these and lots of other kind of Black Knights thing, but the whole army was like he painted it in a day, and it was a huge. I think it was he had about 3,000 points army. And he painted a day because he just sprayed them all white and then like painted them with nilic oxide. Done.
Well, that's certainly one way to do it. And I know we comment on people's fingernails here, but that one looks quite immaculate, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Can't really criticise that fingernail. Very, very tasty. A nice use of edge highlighting there. I'm going to speculate there's not much dusting going on here. Maybe a tad on the bases.
Yeah.
That's probably it, though. Okay, this is from Adam, and this is quite clearly hideous. Look at that.
That is a bone ripper, is it? Or is that just a...
I think so. And one thing that jumps out at me, it looks like that kind of brand there has been freshly cut or burned in there, doesn't it?
That I mean, I could be wrong, and it could be just reds and gloss varnish, but it's a fair chance it's blood for the blood god.
Yeah, the application of it, the positioning of it looks very, very natural, doesn't it? You could believe that cutting into the bicep of a hideous monster would look like that.
It's really, you know, for a fantasy miniature and all, it's really realistically done. This, like the skin, the wound, and the rusted metal of his armor.
Yeah, if you can get the rust effects down, it's a really useful tool because it doesn't actually take that long once you know how to do it.
Yeah, like I said, I've had a lot of practice doing that recently, but yeah, it can look really cool, and it's, you know, with the technical paints, it's a pretty relatively easy effect to get right.
Russell says, no dusting, it cannot be a professional job. Yeah, because all the high-quality painted miniatures involve at least some dusting. And speaking of professional, this is, of course, from Mr. Remington.
Nice.
And look at this. Shall we zoom right in on it, see if he's made any mistakes?
Yeah.
Here we go. Oh, I'm not sure about that eyeball. I think the black centre of the eye is straying slightly onto the eyelid there, I'm afraid. Remington, you're going to have to do it again. But really, though, it is very nice, isn't it?
It's just, Rem is a pretty capable painter in general.
He's very good with his... You can see where the brush strokes are, the highlighting here. And when you zoom really close in on them, then of course you can see where the highlights begin and end. But when you look at them from a distance, then they explode quite a lot into your eye, compared to certain miniatures that look amazing close up, every detail's picked out, but then once it's on the table, you can't see any of it. I think what Mr. M generally goes for is that it looks amazing on the table, and it still looks good close up. Yeah,
Rem's models are all done to a really good standard. I'm kind of the same myself. A good tabletop standard is probably the best to aim for, unless you really want to be one of those kind of next level Amy Snuggs type painters.
Yeah, just like a complete painting prodigy.
Yeah, absolutely. I still can't believe that she's only been painting for like 2 years.
Yeah, I think Mr. Rem cried himself to sleep that night when he found that out.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
Oh, Rural Goblin in the chat. It's been a while.
Nice.
Yeah, I think because we're going slightly later than usual, we're getting some more variety of faces in the chat. People who can't normally make the show live, perhaps.
Yeah, well, Rem's usually sound asleep by now. So.
He is. He might be. He probably is. Unless he's playing Warhammer Total War. This is from Brad, and this is a very, very dark skin tone on the Fire Slayers here. He's still gone for the kind of ginger hair, though, which is a very, very interesting contrast.
Yeah, so he's gone for the kind of ashen skin.
Yeah, they're like in the D&D kind of dwarves, aren't they? The underground ones.
Mm-hmm. Did you get the Fire Slayers book or in the middle? The miniseries?
I have not got any Fire Slayers at all.
Oh, you're holding off for the...
Yeah, I was just waiting to see what the next Dwarden were going to be like, and I'm glad I waited because the Overlords are amazing. Now, do we think there's any dusting going on here? I'm not sure, actually. It doesn't look like the skin's been dusted. The highlight looks too clean, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, but it would most likely be the skin, but I don't think. Yeah, I don't think so.
I think it's just been picked out individually, each one of those toes. unless he tells us otherwise.
Yeah.
It's very striking, though, isn't it?
Looks like it's been picked out with a kind of, maybe like a medium-sized brush.
Maybe one of those tiny Remington fingernail brushes.
Maybe. Are the eyes, are they sort of red? Is that just...
They could well be. We might need better lighting to determine exactly what's going on with the eyes. Lawrence Jameson asks, what is dusting? Okay, I'll explain to people the joke. Mr. Remington came on the show proclaiming that he'd developed and pioneered this amazing new technique which was going to revolutionize painting forever. And it was essentially dry brushing, but he really just called it dusting because it was like even drier than dry brushing, is the way he described it, I think. So he considers himself an expert and a pioneer in the field, but really he's just recycling ideas that people have already come up with. So we're going to call it dusting forever, though, just to make him feel better. Okay, this is from Matthew, and these are, of course, iron breakers with a twist. They've got the iron drake heads on them, which means that they would probably fit in quite decently with the Kharadron Overlords now. They would look like a decent addition to that army if you want to ally in some dispossessed in there.
Yeah, they're very good one.
Of course, they've got the full body coverings. Got the Overlords don't allow any beards to be sticking out. Probably get stuck in propellers and stuff like that. So you don't want that. You don't want your flesh to be sucked out of your suit at high altitude. So very, very tasty. I always thought that people would have made the iron breakers like this without the beards because they're so much easier to paint when it's all metal.
Mm-hmm. Do you know I've still got a bunch of Dwarden boxes lying around. I've got 2 of each, like the sort of iron breakers and iron drakes box, and 2 boxes of the hammerers / longbeards thing. And I do really like dwarves, and I kind of put them aside and kind of like yourself, just to wait and see what happened with them.
Well, hopefully they don't meet the same fate as my gyro bomber.
Yeah. You know, I'd love to get around to have an excuse to get them out and paint them. So fingers crossed for maybe a dispossessed battle tome at some point. But who knows?
You never know, and maybe the next batch of Dwarden, the next Dwarden faction, will look even more like these guys. You never know. Okay, moving on. This is Remington again now, and more of his fire effects and his cloaky goodness. He's good at painting cloaks.
Yeah, I like the base on this one.
It's like it almost looks like the kind of thing you would stand a witch on top of before you burn her.
Yeah, maybe that's exactly what I was going for. Like sort of like a pyre kind of thing.
It could be.
And I like his fire effects as well. He's definitely done it right with the kind of... Sometimes there are people kind of make the mistake of painting the darker part of the fire at the source rather than at the tips. So I'm glad to see he's done it the right way around.
Also, the thing with his fire effect, it's almost like he's painted it on a canvas. It's like the model doesn't even need to be there because he's got the strokes. You can zoom in a bit so people can get a true appreciation for it. I think it's very, very good the way he's done this. He could just paint that on a piece of paper and it would still look as good, I think, his fire effects.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So is this part of Rim's... He bought a whole bunch of Free Guild stuff, didn't he?
Yes, he's doing a Devoted of Sigmar army.
So right.
He's putting a lot of flagellants in there. And it's... Well, actually, when we were at Warhammer World, he was trying to buy a Witch Hunter, but they didn't have it. They had one in the cabinet, but they didn't actually have one for sale. So I think they were going to order one in for him. And there was another model he wanted as well that they didn't have, so he was quite unlucky that day. I can't remember what the other one was, though, but one of them was definitely the Witch Hunter.
Yeah.
Because I remember when he pointed it out to me in the cabinet, I did my classic impression of the Witch Hunter from Vermintide on Steam, which goes something like this. Medical supplies here. Anyone who's played that game will be blown away by the authenticity of my impression there.
That was staggeringly accurate.
And finally, this is from John. And, I mean, look at that.
Whoa.
Just the model itself is a beast, and he's obviously done some crazy things to it. He's put a cauldron of blood on top of this.
On top of his, what's it called? Dread Saurian?
Yes. So I dread to think how much it cost for all these parts.
Yeah, well, especially see if you look in the background, you can see that's another Forge World model.
Yeah, there certainly is.
With some kind of rider on top of it. So, Jesus.
There is a quite a high financial value here just in this one picture. But then he spent so much money on the models that his background is just a few pieces of paper. It's quite a contrast.
I have to admit, yeah, I kind of do that too. But yeah, it's a really cool idea.
It's the steps going down onto its head. I'm not sure anyone could tolerate that.
Yeah, maybe not so much that, but I like the idea of taking these kind of big monsters and putting some of those kinds of kits onto the back of them as well, because I've seen it a lot with the Chaos War Shrine being put onto the back of things like Thunder Tusks or the Bastillodon or something.
It's a very, very interesting concept. I've seen people build kind of shrines and things on the back of monsters and then maybe painted them as ghosts, as like alternate mortis engines and things like that. And those are always really interesting. Whenever you take a giant monster and repurpose it for something else, it always looks very cool. And the paintwork on it's pretty tasty as well. Dino Titan Edition says, Andy, show mine too. Which miniature are you referring to there? Because if it's on the Facebook group, I might have missed it. So if you want to very quickly message it to me, perhaps, I'll check my messages in a moment, and then we'll come back and look at that. But let's just drop out of the old screen share for a second, and I'll see if anything's come up on Facebook. Let's see here. Anything in the group? I don't see anything, Mr. Dino. I think you're going to have to very quickly post it if you want it to be shown. I'm going to give you about 1 minute to do so. There has actually, one picture has popped up there, which I don't think is yours, but I'm going to quickly grab this because this is very nice. And okay, this chap by the name of Bean, apparently. I don't know if that's his real name or maybe if he's from a country where you wouldn't pronounce it as Bean. But there we go. Look at that. Speaking of nerdly goodness.
Oh, wow.
Grotesque. I mean, he hasn't finished the basing yet, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
That, of course, is a very nice model.
Yeah, that's been around for a good long time, that one.
It is. I always think of it as the one miniature you want. If someone breaks into your house and all you have is just like a big sock that you can throw that thing into and just swing it over your head, no one's going to survive that.
Better than a couple of snooker balls any day.
I mean, Nurglings are always amazing.
Yeah.
I like the fact that he has his tongue wrapped around the sword like that.
Yeah, it's definitely a sort of a classic model by now. It's always Forge World have been sort of putting that one out for years, haven't they? They've never really replaced it. So, must be popular.
Dino apparently sent it via mail. Well, is that email or is that the actual postal service? Because one of those is very unlikely to get here in time for the show. So I think we're going to have to leave that one until next week, Dino, unfortunately, because it's not to be seen anywhere. Right, this has been quite a long one, about 2 hours.
Yeah, it's been yeah. So.
And without Rem here, we were able to actually dive into some War Scrolls and give you some real information for once, which is a nice change.
I know, like I said, if Rem had been here, as soon as we we brought out the War Scrolls, that would have been it.
Normally he kind of zones out for about 5 minutes of War Scroll discussion, and then he'll just completely change the subject mid-stream for someone else, and then he'll just come out with something like, so what's your favourite kind of pygmy, everybody?
Or a new $1 million idea.
Yeah, actually, since Rem's not here, maybe we should try and give a couple of $1 million ideas. I'm just looking around the room now to see if there are any potential $1 million ideas lying around at my painting table. Actually, yeah, I've got one. Clippers. When you have old crusty clippers that have lost their spring and they don't work anymore, there is a use for them, and I'll show you what it is. Polystyrene cement, needle applicator. It gets stuck in there, doesn't it? You need something to grip it. What better than a pair of crusty old clippers that you can't really use for clipping anymore, so it doesn't matter if you accidentally blunt them. Just get a good grip on it and just whoosh, pull it out. There you go. $1 million saved there.
Nice.
What do you think about that one?
That one's not too bad, actually. It's a pretty common problem, so always good to have a solution.
There you go. If you don't have very good grip on your hands, and those things are so tiny, it's difficult even if you've got like kung fu monkey grip. Okay. Right, I think it's time to wrap this one up, unless you've got any $1 million ideas you'd like to share before we go.
I mean, I don't quite have Rem's genius streak going on. No, I'm afraid not.
Considering you've got a Batman poster in the background, you're not really living up to his example of being the master of gadgets, are you?
Not really, no. It's more of an admiration thing rather than emulation.
That's how it should be, really. That's how the audience feel when watching this show. You can't really live up to the standards that we set here at the Andy and Rem Show, but you can certainly aspire to maybe one day become a 10th of the painters and gamers that we are.
Yep, that's all we can hope to be.
And the subscribers drop by about 50% after that comment, I think. Okay, time to wrap this one up. So, let's have one final screen share of this beautiful image, where, of course, I get to pilot a ship and your head just gets stuck on some random dude in the middle of a battlefield.
Slaughter Priest, not bad.
It's not bad, it could be worse. I think the lighting's a bit inconsistent on that Photoshop job, though. It looks like the sun's in your face, but it's not really on him, is it?
You know, other than the lighting, actually, both the pictures look pretty plausible.
Yeah, I could have messed with the skin tones a bit. I should get someone to produce some heads just of me, so I can make like an entire Stormcast army with my heads. That would be amazing. I mean, if Sigmar wants to clone anybody, who better?
And I'm not going to lie, now I'm really tempted to try and green stuff a pair of sunglasses onto a Slaughter Priest.
I wouldn't mind seeing that. Okay, folks, don't forget to check out the various links in the description, Facebook group, and so on. All that social media goodness. And catch you next time, which should be in 2 weeks. I'm sure we'll have Mr. Remington back. There will, of course, be other videos on this channel between now and then. And that's, of course, if my channel hasn't been shut down by with an onslaught of just rage after I set, or allegedly set, those Space Marines on fire the other day. That's quite an unprecedented number of dislikes on that video. So I might actually have been mobbed and dragged away and just locked up somewhere by next time.
It was a hell of a video.
It was. If anyone hasn't seen that yet, they should probably check it out. If you want to see unbridled rage in the comments, that's a good place to go as well. Okay, good night, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.